just give you guys a chance to ask some questions and do it kind of really informal. So to begin with, I'm kind of going to introduce everyone, and then we'll take it from there. So at the very end of the table, we have Mr. Patrick Weeks. Patrick is a writer. Patrick's been with us for a number of years. His creations, as per the last couple of years, include both Mort and Tally and a number of other characters. So just keep that in mind when we're asking your questions. Right beside him, we have Mr. Nathan Matichuk. Nathan is, part of our tech QA department. He's actually leading that initiative, and his responsibilities for Mass Effect 2 and 3 have kind of varied a little bit. But at the end of the day, he's one of the last defenses between a quality product and the stuff that we kind of submit to him. So. And right beside Nathan, we've got Thomas Polinsky. This is one of our amazing level designers who's been with us since Mass Effect 2, and he worked fully on 3 as well. Beside Thomas, sitting in the water, we've got Leo Lucian Bay. Part of the cinematic design team, and what cinematic design does for Bioware is kind of bring to life a lot of those moments, those like emotional kind of narrative beats that you see within the games. They're responsible for that. Beside Leo, we've got Scott Mitchell. Scott is our lead animator, and his responsibilities go from anywhere from leading the animation team to kind of pushing the creative vision behind animation on the franchise as well. And besides Scott, we've got Mr. Ryan Morton. And so Ryan, he's worked as a localization project manager for a number of years. He's one of the old school Biowareans, but more recently he's part of the Mass Effect trilogy compilation, and he's a producer for that. So, and myself, I'm a producer. I work on the franchise. My name is Mike, and I'll kind of be moderating this. The way we want it to work is, what I'll do is ask some very generic questions to the team and kind of get them to their thoughts and matches. Then halfway through, we'll probably open it up for questions, and you guys can the mic round will come to you, and we'll pick people around. We have some prizes, so the prizes are, we haven't really decided how we're going to give them out yet, but I think right now, probably not good. Wave your hand now. It'll be probably based on the quality of question or something like that. So we have a really amazing question, and this is such a subjective thing that we can take it away or leave it at will. We'll decide. So to kind of get started, I want to open it up to the panel group, and you guys can kind of answer in whatever order you want, riff off of each other. So pretty much standard. What's your favorite Mass Effect moment that you've worked on so far in the studio? Patrick, how about we start with you?
Okay, so they said to eat it. So can people hear me in the back?
Yeah.
So I probably should go with something like big and huge, like the parts that I helped contribute to Rannoch or Morden's loyalty mission in Mass Effect 2. But honestly, my favorite moment, just because of the sheer goofiness, is in Mass Effect 1 we had these load transitions when you were walking around the Citadel. You had to get in an elevator, and then you sat for a while. And sometimes music played, and then you got off the elevator, and it was really long. And we got to the point where we said, okay, well, how long is this load going to be? Well, it's going to be significant. It doesn't look like it's getting any shorter. So I went home and was talking to my wife, who did not yet work for Bioware, although now she's one of our senior editors. And I said, yeah, it was a rough day. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do in these elevators. And also, I've got to write some news bits and figure out where to put them. And my wife, while serving dinner said, why don't you just play the news in the elevators? Or have people talk to each other. And so I went and I talked to Drew Carpation, who was the lead writer on Mass Effect 1, and said, yeah, so my wife suggested this. And he said, good, you've got 2 days. And that was how we got the elevator banter in Mass Effect 1. And one of my favorite parts is hearing people say in Mass Effect 2, I miss the elevators. Which, if you would ask fast, we would never have guessed that would happen.
All right, I'll take another crack at this. So, as a QA tech lead, I tend to deal with systems a lot more than with content. So for me, one of my moments was Mass Effect 2. We'd introduced a new system into the game, a constraints damage system. So where you could shoot people in the arms or in the legs or in the head, and you could do different things. And so in order to make this work correctly, we put together this test map where we had this row of mechs on one wall, and on the other wall we had this row of weapons, every weapon you could possibly think of in the game. And so I built this map, and then I sat down for about a day, pulling out every single weapon and just shooting these things in the arms, the legs, and watching them explode. We were doing that for about a day, and I kind of sat back and went, my job's awesome!
Yeah, mine was, I could come up with a couple other ones, but I'll go a little more recently. We recently released the Leviathan DLC pack, and on the level that's on the side of the cliff, we have 100 harvesters flying around. And whenever we were working on Mass Effect 3, like, even from Mass Effect 1, they were always trying to get the harvester in the game. It got cut from 1, it was an ambient thing in number 2. Number 3, they were thinking, okay, we finally get it as a real enemy. Originally in Thessia, we had about 10 of them, and we ended up triggering, I think 2 made it in. But these things were a pain to work with, they were expensive, they took up memory. And all of a sudden we have a DLC pack where they say, okay, we want about 50 of them flying around. So, threw them in, I just said screw it, screw the results, screw how bad it's going to play on PS3, throw them in there, and somehow it actually magically worked. So that was one of my favorite moments, was just not having to deal with them not working anymore, and actually getting them to attack the level and stuff. I just had a lot of fun with things that actually worked for once.
So I think the favourite thing of mine that I worked on was probably Shepard and Cortez on the Citadel, which a lot of people probably haven't seen, but it's also a good lesson in using computers. We'd been working really long hours, and I didn't save, so I ended up having to do this conversation with Shepard and Cortez dancing about 3 times before I finally got the message and hit the save button. And so yeah, now every time I close my eyes or I'm just sitting there randomly minding my own business, I get flashes of Shepard and Cortez dancing. So that may not be my favourite by choice, but yeah.
My favourite moment's a little bit obscure. You may or may not have seen it, but at one point during one of my playthroughs of Mass Effect 3, I was going through the scene where you're talking with James and you're sparring, and we had just finished integrating the mech dog for the special edition. And I'm sparring away with James, and then out of the corner of my eye, I catch this little mech dog. Just like make his way through the scene. It was just super awkward because it completely changed the dynamic of the scene that was going on. It was supposed to be kind of serious. And this little mech dog. Kind of wrecks everything.
So I've worked for a long time in localization, so the translation and foreign language voice recording of our games. And I came into that about 6 months away from Mass Effect 1 ship. And so a lot of it was already sort of in motion, but I knew right then on my very first day that the Italian language version of Mass Effect was going to be something special. We were taking a look at one of the scenes, and PS3 users, plug your ears here because you'll get this ruined for you. But early on in the game, there's a sort of a meeting between Saren and Nihilus. And in the English version of the game, Saren does something and then says, "Relax, I've got this covered." And in the Italian version of the game, Saren ends up saying, "Tranquillo." Which can be translated a couple of different ways. One of them is "go to sleep." There are those who know. So that's sort of stuck out for me as sort of a hallmark moment in the Italian localization of the Mass Effect trilogy. And you know what? It has just continued on throughout the entire thing. So if you get a chance and you speak even a little bit of Italian, man, check out the Italian versions.
Alright, cool. So, probably the next question we should go to is, Patrick, and this is probably a good place for you to start. How do new ideas get implemented on the franchise? Kind of walk us through the step from inception to, where they can be passed on to the next team.
Okay, so it starts out as a combination of writing, level design, and cine design. Kind of coming up with what, for lack of a better term, we call either the razor. And the razor is when someone plays this, they play, you know, a 40-minute mission. And yeah, a lot of it is going to be climbing ladders, climbing ladders, clicking on doors, you know, shooting bad guys. But when you play it, what's the thing that you tell your friend the next day? Oh, I did this thing and I had to walk down the barrel of a giant gun in the middle of the ship and it was awesome. Or, oh, I did this thing and I had to fight a Reaper and I was on foot, what the hell? That's the razor. Like, that's the thing we want you to remember later. So writing, cine design, level design for the most part, kind of work on the early stages of that. We get that approved, make sure that, you know, two levels aren't trying to do the same thing, because then that kind of gets repetitive, trying to make sure it flows with the overall story. And at that point, it gets handed over, once writing has done our first pass on it, our early writing, then it hands over to cine design.
By that point, we have a general idea of what it is we need to do. Ryan's got the words down, and then we figure out how many explosions we can put in and where we're going to try and squeeze them in. So it's fairly creative from our side. Scott is the guy with the misfortune of taking our animation list and all the weird things that we ask for that just end up not coming to us. But yeah.
So the animation team will get together with all the different cinematic designers and we will discuss kind of what we can give them in terms of mocap or animations that we don't already have in our library. We have thousands and thousands of animations in our animation library that span back from, you know, anyone. We also use animations from, say, Jade Empire. Then we repurpose them, change them up as much as we can. And everything is really systematic, so some of our files can have like 15 or 20 different options and little twitches. If we don't have them, then we get to go to Vancouver, to the EA studio, where they have a big motion capture studio. You guys know what motion capture is, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
So we get to make actors dress up in spandex suits with reflective ping pong balls, and then tell them what to do in front of a bunch of bright lights, which is pretty awesome. Then they act it out. You try to give them the scenario as best as possible so it's not too awkward for them and they can actually act. And then we have the joy of taking that back to the studio here and then making it work for the city designers.
Now, what I may have given people the wrong impression. As stuff is going on with cine design, kind of in parallel, it's also happening on the level design side. Level design and art are working together to make the area where this is going to happen and make the gameplay that supports the narrative and makes the narrative stronger, and in some cases, you know, changes the narrative. So I don't know, Thomas, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so our first interaction is when we get the razor from the writers once they figured out what they want in the level. And at that point, we pretty much have to create a blueprint of, okay, if we wanted to start here, where do we want things to happen? What, you know, is it going to be a hallway? Is it going to be outside? And we actually built the level in this really basic, just kind of checkerboard, blocky, square area. And then from there, we can go back and forth with the writers of, okay, does this pace out well? Is this going to fit your narrative? Is this going on way too long? Do you want like a short, quick action story? And on top of that, we also get to be a bit of a reality check, because sometimes we get writing, it's like, you know, we want 50 guys dropping on you, we can only fit 10 on screen, so change something somewhere. Or we can get cine design to kind of fake it in, and it looks really good. So this is where we're kind of getting our stuff started, but making sure we're holding the reins on everyone else as well. And then with Level Art, they're doing the same thing with us, because we want to do a lot of really cool events in the game, and then Level Art is saying, well, there's no way we can create all those pieces in there. So it's a lot of boundary checking on everyone else, because every department wants to throw in as much as they possibly can, but everything you put in affects another one of the departments, so we always have to bounce off of each other as we go. And then once we have a bit of a better idea, we actually get the pacing out there, then we can actually start bringing in the fights, the enemies, and starting to make a real level out of it. And then from there, that's where we get QA, start